let's get into it. So with CURVA Chats, just to intro to you, like I said, I kind of gave you a perspective. It is kind of podcast format, but the idea is, again, it's more about like, can we give the viewers something tangible? So when we clip it up, we take a lot of the ums out and things like that. And the concept came from a business podcast I listened to called the 20-Minute VC. And the idea is, if you're a busy person in London and you want to listen to a podcast about venture capital, but you've only got 20 minutes because that's, your tube, whatever time, this podcast is perfect for you. And this is the same idea. It's like, hey, you want to focus on a 20-minute conversation about managing your body? Perfect. I'm going to listen to this podcast on the way to training or something like that, rather than an hour or 2 hours that you've got to go back to, and it's just like a lot of fluff. So that's the idea. All right. So one of the first questions we always start with is, how did you realize you actually want to play rugby? And what is one thing that has really helped you kind of get to that next?
I can't really say when I wanted to start playing rugby, because I started playing at like 6 years old. My dad kind of threw us into everything. I played soccer and rugby all the way up until 18. But I probably realized that I wanted to, take it a little bit more seriously from the age of probably 12 years old, when you start getting into like 15 aside and you realize that you actually have a bit about you. And then the thing that's kind of helped me take it to the next level is just really focusing on the things that I can do and trying to ignore everything that I can't control. I grew up in Hong Kong, and I knew as soon as I didn't go to a boarding school at 16, I probably wasn't in the UK or Ireland. I probably wasn't going to be a professional rugby player, because the pathway is so set in stone in those countries. So from then on, I had to focus on what I could do, where I could go, the things that I can control, making sure that, I got good grades in school so I could go to the best rugby and academic school possible that had a good rugby team. And that I would get in and I could chase the next level of rugby from there. Then when I maybe didn't make a team at the university, it was like, what can I do to take it to the next level? Where can I go? I took a year working abroad to go to Ireland and then Australia, in the hopes of, looking towards training rugby as much as possible. I had the backing from my parents, obviously, but they knew that I made that commitment. I wasn't just going to be loafing around. So it's all the things that you can control. Even coming here back this season where I've been injured, I missed about 4 or 5 games to start the season. I have to control what I control by doing my rehab, making sure that I'm fully prepared for every game, knowing that if I played, didn't have an aspect of my game in one of my matches, that I, the next week, went back and focused on improving that. And I can't control necessarily selections. I can't control how the players around me play, but I know that I can control what I can do to put myself in the best position to chase my aspirations of playing professional and international rugby.
Nice. So today's topic is about managing your... Walk us through, if you have a game, let's say on Saturday or Sunday, walk us through like your week after. So from Monday, how you then manage your body from recovery.
The first thing I like to do is just kind of having a set schedule in terms of my daily routine. So I know every single day, and I know not everyone's going to be able to do this, but every single day I know that when I have my first meal, I'm going to be having a good amount of protein, good amount of carbohydrates, and, getting all my other supplements in, just so I am ready to start the day. And also I'm ready to fuel my body for recovery from the game on the weekend, but also being able to recover for whatever training I'm doing during the day, whether it be strength or running or team training. So I like to start the day in the same way every single day, because that's like, it gets me off on the right foot, and it's just a certain amount of nutrition and recovery that I know will be in the bank. I don't have to worry about trying to fill it in at the end of the day and then potentially missing out. From then, for the rest of the week, it's just about feeling how my body feels, feeling it out. So last week, for example, I played more at 12 for the second half, so I was in a lot more contact. And then on the Monday, which I'm not used to, my body was a little bit sore, but I still got it, made sure to get into the gym, but I managed my body from there. Certain movements I felt a little bit weaker in because my body was a bit sore, but I managed to, understand how it felt, push myself to the extent to which my body was able to handle it, not necessarily to failure, for example, a few reps away from failure, knowing that I'm getting some stimulus in and maintaining, my body to prepare for the next week. And then in terms of just managing it, it's also just, looking after any ailments that you do have. So if I have any like muscle soreness, I'll make sure to, ice it. If it's lower back pain, I get the hot pack on it or something like that. And then as well, get through mobility, making sure to move on the Monday, not just, especially as someone who works from home, making sure that outside of my actual gym training or whatever, that I'm not just sat by myself or sat in my bed, kind of just relaxing in that sort of way, making sure to move the body to not stiffen up.
Do you do anything? Is there a secret sauce that you have that you kind of, maybe while you're watching Netflix or something, or while you're eating? Is it like a little trick that you do that actually helps recovery?
I think the biggest thing that I focused on, and it's cliche to say, is just staying hydrated. I think people underestimate how much water you need to drink. So it starts immediately after a game. We had a game on Saturday, and in the team meeting, in the changing room after the win, I just made sure to grab a couple bottles of water and I just started, drinking it. Different people will say different things, but after a game, you're meant to drink like a liter of water per kilo of body weight lost in the game. We don't have a scale in our changing rooms after a game, but I do like to picture the fact that I probably would have lost at least like a kilo or something. So it's about rehydrating, and that's what I do all during the week. As you mentioned, when any meal I'm eating, even if I'm not thirsty, I'll make sure just to have at least like a pint of water, because in our house we just have pint glasses as our drinking glasses. So I'll make sure just to have that, and I'm not necessarily chugging it, but I'm drinking it through my meal, and that's already half a liter of water that you're drinking. You have that 3 meals a day, that's a liter and a half, and then you're drinking throughout the day. You're probably having a few more cups, and now you're drinking at least 3 liters of water a day, which is a good amount to get in for performance and just keeping your body hydrated.
Are you taking any electrolytes?
I have like a handful of sea salt in the morning just to get those electrolytes in. I don't necessarily feel the need to like spend money on an electrolyte package or something like that. Just like getting my pH levels to a good level in the morning after sweating a lot, and you naturally will sweat in your sleep, so getting those electrolytes back in just through sea salt, not like iodized table salt. So I either have Himalayan salt or just straight sea salt, just a handful. I either put it in water or I just lick it off my hand and then make sure to, get the water in after to kind of get that flush through the body. And then I just take creatine in the morning, the 5 to 10 grams in the morning, every morning.
Oh, nice. Have you noticed with creatine a big difference? Like anything in terms of like cognition or muscle?
To be honest, like I can't really say if I've noticed a difference, but again, it's going back to the things that you can control. Like it's something that is the most researched supplement for, muscle building, recovery, and why not use it? I know people think like, oh yeah, it might cause you to lose your hair or whatever. If you want to know the truth, if you're going to lose your hair, you're going to lose your hair regardless if you have creatine or not. It's all genetics. So being able to do the things that are controllable, like having the creatine, it might not have an effect on my body. I might, but the science says that it will, and you might as well do, if you can afford it, obviously, do everything that you can to put your body in the best position based on the research that's there.
I mean, to be fair, creatine's relatively, especially compared to protein, quite cheap, right? So
yeah,
it's crazy. What is a habit for you that's a non-negotiable throughout your recovery week or throughout just, your week?
So non-negotiables for me is nutrition, making sure that I get every macronutrient that I need in during the day. I have to admit, I'm not great at getting my veg. I do take a multivitamin. That's on me being a picky eater, but also, just having a bad memory and forgetting to, if I have bought veg, to actually cook them, and then it going off, and then food waste, money waste. But like in terms of the big three, fat, carbs, and protein, making sure that every single day I'm getting that in. It also helps. I also manage that by checking my weight kind of, once a week. And because I eat quite a similar diet, like day to day, I'm able to, manage my workload to see if I'm losing too much weight, gaining weight, but I tend to stay around the same weight. And then just making sure that once I'm in the gym and doing my work, because I'm not like necessarily bulking or cutting, making sure that I'm pushing myself to a hard enough extent to try at least, gain some strength, and at the minimum not lose any strength as the season progresses. And in terms of just recovery, like again, nutrition, hydration, I don't do necessarily anything too much in terms of, which I should, in terms of mobility and stretching. That's kind of a symptom of just having not done it for years, now it being quite hard to kind of get into because it hurts so much. But for anyone listening, that would be my first thing after getting your nutrition and your hydration down, is then getting mobile, making sure that you're stretching. Because if I had started, 5 to 10 years ago, I might not have the kind of some of the injury issues or, tightness issues that I have now.
I'm going to give a quick shout. There's a couple of Hong Kong players, or they used to play, Max Woodward and Hugo Styles, and I actually over lockdown used to follow or watch them a lot, and they were really big on their kind of mobility, and I always felt quite inspired. I mean, it did help that they had a back set of a beach and sun and sand while doing their mobility, but they check them out because they're really quite big on that. Like, slight change actually, talking about nutrition but also training before. You're also a referee. It's quite insightful actually as a player. So two-part question. I'll ask the first one. How does your training, do you train specifically physically and also in terms of nutrition as a referee? And if so, how does that differ to you as a player?
Because right now my main focus is playing. I train to be a rugby player, but that just comes hand in hand with being a referee. Obviously, if I want to pursue refereeing at a higher level and stop the rugby playing, my training will probably differ. I obviously will want to be strong for the sake of being strong, but you have to be probably a little bit lighter than I am now because you're not having to physically put your body, into rucks, into tackles on the pitch. You don't need to have as much weight to you, but you do need to be able to get around the pitch and almost be fitter than some of the players, because some of the players, if they're on the far side of the pitch, they don't have to get to every ruck. But as a referee, you have to get to every ruck. So my training right now is tailored to like playing rugby, but at the level that I am in terms of refereeing, it's suitable for that level, and it will be suitable pretty much until it gets to the point where it's actually my living or it's my profession to be, or close to be my profession as a referee. Because even the fitness and the training that I'm at now, as people you'll always get a ref who might be a little bit older. At least my training right now is going to put me in better stead in that regard in comparison to some of the refs who kind of with as they age want to remain in rugby. They're good refs, but fitness is fitness, and getting around the pitch is a big part of being a referee. So for now, I'm just focusing on my actual rugby training and training to be a player, but that is easily transferable to being a ref for now.
I'd love to see relatively age-wise a ref who did a Bronco, and see kind of average Broncos of, let's say, a ref at the age of 30 or something, because I can imagine it being fairly high. I mean, they're kind of training very similar stimulus to what a Bronco needs, so it would be quite
for sure. They probably be a little bit slower just because they need to focus on acceleration, but they're kind of more training for longer games. You occasionally will need to have to make a sprint, but it's not as repeated acceleration efforts like a lot of the rugby players do. Hence turning off the line like a rugby player does on a Bronco. They'll probably be more catered to that. And as we all know, Broncos are also partly technique too. So rugby players, having done it for many years, will have that technique a little bit down a little bit better. But yeah, no doubt they'd be able to keep up, especially a 30-year-old athlete. Whether you be a referee or a rugby player, is still a 30-year-old athlete.
How has refereeing helped your game, actual rugby playing game?
I think it's actually the other way round. How playing rugby actually helped my refereeing, because I've played rugby to quite a good level at this point. Going into the refereeing aspect, what you want to hear from a referee, aka me, what I'm telling the people. Also, you're kind of aware of what you're looking out, and it can also be somewhat detrimental because when you're in a under 16 game, girls or boys, you have expectations of where the ball's actually going to go based on you're actually playing. So you're kind of standing hopefully out of the way. So you might be standing closer to a ruck because that in a men's game, the ball's going to go behind you and wide. But because you're refereeing, 16-year-olds who don't have necessarily the ability, the widest passes, sometimes you're almost getting in the passing lanes. So it's more so the actual playing rugby has transferred to the refereeing, because I know as a player what I want from the referee. When a lot of referees, sometimes they go into refereeing but before they got to a level where they kind of have that understanding of what the players want, or they've been refereeing for so long that the game has completely changed, and now players on the pitch want different things from the referees or have different expectations from the referees. I can't comment on, what those things are, but it's just kind of an obvious thing that if you do something for long enough, you have to keep up with the times, and some people do and some people don't. So I like to think that because I'm a current player, I'm able to transfer that, ability to my refereeing as well.
I'll also give you a lot of credit actually, because you're a ref, a player and a coach. And I can tell on a lot of your posts when you talk about coaching and stuff, you have like a kind of insight as a ref. Also, sometimes when you talk about your posts as a player, you're also giving like insights of how the ref would think about those things. So I think those three actually is quite unique. And again, I've not met many people who've done that, and it seems to help you in every aspect of you as a
yeah, like the coaching obviously is again helped by knowing what I want as a player and being a current player, kind of, having gone through the systems over the last few years and having not necessarily been aged out like some coaches are. And, some clubs like to keep them around for kind of almost for the sake of it. And then, yeah, in terms of actually analyzing the game and not getting frustrated in games by refereeing decisions a lot, it's aided by the fact that as a referee, that you will miss some things. you might take a glance away and something might happen at the ruck that you don't see, and everyone's going to be complaining. And then I just think I'll say to my teammates, or I'll just think to myself, there's no point in resting on your laurels about it, because we don't have a TMO. We don't have, often you don't have refs who are mic'd up and being able to hear what they get calls from the sideline. So you kind of just have to accept that, you have a referee there who's doing his best job. If he's able to keep up with the game, he's keeping everyone safe, and he's getting the majority of his calls right, that's the best that you can ask for. And if you want to complain, you can either start refereeing yourself and see how hard it is, or you can just not play because the games won't be going on because no ref's going to want to ref your.
I think I'll say this because I don't want you to say this as a ref, but I think one of the things, like a big thing, they see it in international rugby as well a lot, is hands in the ruck and just supporting your own body weight. And I think if you have that experience as a player, understanding what it actually takes to support your own body weight, and actually at times when you probably know you're not, because you actually just put your body weight on the ball. I think the refs that probably have that experience as a player or recently realize, like, most of the time you're actually putting your body weight on the ball, which is obviously you shouldn't be doing. All right, we're going to do CURVA breakdown, which is CURVA rapid fire. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions and you give me the first thing that you can think of. All right, so what's one drill that you think every athlete should be doing this week?
Just wrist flick passing. So keeping the ball tucked to your elbows, tucked in, ball almost at your belly button, and just focusing on your wrist flick, because it's a very overlooked aspect of passing the ball. I know you don't actually generate all the power from it, but if you're not able to actually, get that rotation through the ball, it doesn't matter how strong your pass is, it's not going to be a good flight to the ball, and it's not going to go directly to the person that you're passing to in the exact place where you want to be passing.
Who would you say is the best passer of the ball, at least in world rugby?
I would have said Aaron Smith before, but obviously now that he's done. But recently I've liked Max Ajomo from Bath, and obviously his teammates, and Finn Russell has a very good pass too.
Yeah. As a ref, what is one detail that you see many players doing wrong, or that you can help them on?
It's not super applicable to lower level rugby where the ref doesn't have touch judges or anything like that, but genuinely knowing where the back foot of a ruck is. Like, so many players will be offside because they see like one of their players on the floor and they don't actually look to see if there's any other limbs. Yes, the ref might not call it, but if it's quite a big distance because there's a whole leg sticking out the back of a ruck, or someone's whole body has fallen through and you're gaining an extra, meter from not getting onside, that's the one thing that I would kind of just make sure to be constantly looking, because the rucks are constantly changing. You might glance away, and now the ruck's moved, a meter and a half, and now you're offside.
Do you have a cue that you use in games for whenever maybe you make a mistake and it helps you kind of get back?
My cue is just to do the next job 100% accurately, and that job could just be a pass. Like, next, if you've messed up even your kicking, like you might have missed touch, done a poor kick straight into touch, whatever, it doesn't have to be your next kick you get 100% right. Obviously, yes, you want to, but it's whatever the next thing you do, whether it's a pass just to a set of forwards, you make sure it goes straight into their hands that are up, you're catching the ball early, and it kind of just resets everything. You're not just thinking about, oh, what am I going to do on my next kick? And that's kind of keeping you preoccupied from what you have to do outside of, that thing that you just messed up.
What player have you played with or against that is an absolute specimen? And tell us why.
Paul Brown-Bampo, he's the winger for Exeter. I went to university with him, and I didn't get to play with him because he was in the first team and I wasn't. But I trained with him a little bit at the end of COVID, before, when there was no rugby on. But yeah, he's just a freak athlete. He's genuinely one of the freakiest athletes I've ever seen. Naturally, probably shredded about 8 to 10% body fat year round, ridiculously fast, got a crazy step that doesn't look like it should work, but still magically does. And like even cleans ridiculous amount bench press. The most impressive thing, I can't remember the exact number, but he had the highest like counter movement jump out of any athlete in the whole of the university across, like that include athletics and stuff like that. So, he's just the freakiest athlete as well. He's a great guy, and as well, he was also just ridiculously smart. I have him on LinkedIn, and I saw he got a internship to go work at Morgan Stanley after university, but of course he just chose to go play professional rugby instead. So he had to, it wasn't too bad of an opportunity that he had to turn down.
Last one. What is one tool that you use that you could recommend to anyone, whether it's recovery, whether it's anything in your training?
Well, I'll say two things. One, in terms of training, the biggest tool is probably your phone, like actually being able to record yourself and making sure that you're getting good form, and also just being able to kind of track progress. And then in terms of recovery, just like a simple ice pack, not just a hard block, but something that that's a little bit malleable still once it's cold and frozen, because it kind of allows you to kind of mold it to whatever part of your body that's, is injured. I think people underestimate the fact that, if something happens after a game, you might put ice on it, but then they just, as soon as they get home, they just, yeah, it's whatever. I'll just let it heal out. Like, again, that's something that's controllable. You can ice something. It doesn't take long to just ice something for 20 minutes, and then whilst you're watching something on Netflix, like, it's so easy to do. And you do that every couple hours, and you're just going to be helping yourself. A lot of people will take like an ibuprofen and be like, yeah, it's an anti-inflammatory, but why aren't you just doing everything else as well? Like, just, icing to reduce inflammation as well.
Hey, awesome. I really appreciate the time.